Hi, Warren McCarty here with another round of MPIF one-on-one. My guest this afternoon is Kyle Bracey, 185-pound mixed martial artist. Kyle, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, Warren.
Appreciate you taking the time to join us today. Let's kind of talk about your career path and what's led you to this point. A lot of people are talking about you as one of the hottest up-and-coming names in the 185-pound division in the world of MMA, but you took quite a leap of faith to get to this point. You didn't take, I guess, maybe the normal path to being a professional fighter. So let's review your athletic background and where we kind of ended up from here.
Certainly. You know, I wrestled at the collegiate level at Eastern Illinois University, which is a Division I school, and got motivated through there to continue after wrestling, after my college wrestling life, to continue wrestling at the national level. Of course, we had some very successful guys from our university compete in, the UFC and other organizations, namely Matt Hughes. And so, as I wrestled there my freshman, sophomore years under Matt's tutelage, we got to follow him after he left. And, so he was always a motivator for all of us. And so when I made my choice for a job profession, I knew I wanted to get in coaching and, do it to where I was able to coach and compete at the same time. So it was kind of funny how it all transpired. I submitted an application down here in Boys Ranch, Texas, and me being from Illinois, that's 1,000 miles away. And I got a call back from Paul Jones.
Sure.
And, Paul gave me a call and, of course, told me about the ranch. I was intrigued initially, and then after I got to learn a little bit more about Paul, I really was excited because Paul, was much like me, was a Midwestern boy, Midwestern wrestler who had taken, himself out of that element down to Texas and coached and competed at the same time, and ultimately he made it to the UFC. I believe at age 31. So it was an opportunity for me to come down here, and I did so. And then in doing so, you understand that when you get into a job of coaching down here in Texas as a full-time gig, and I'm not talking 40 hours a week full-time gig, I think in my lightest weeks of coaching it was 70, 60 hours, and then in football season that was a 90 to 100 hour week.
The grind.
Yeah, it's a grind. And so I competed, and I was doing well. However, I wasn't able to compete to the capacity I felt I was capable of because of the time constraints. So it left me to a point where I needed to make a decision.
Talk to me about the influence that Paul Jones has had on your career, not only during his time with you as a coach there at Boys Ranch, but making that transition and encouraging you to take that leap of faith. Because a lot of people, you mentioned the grind and the number of hours that you put in, but I think a lot of people would also say, man, phenomenal pay, insurance, you're coaching kids, it's a career that you can retire from.
Certainly.
Walking away from that, going into the world of everything's black and white, you win or you lose, you get paid or you don't.
Sure.
How much of an influence did he have on that decision and on your career?
Actually, Paul gave me the backing. I can remember being in my office working in, I believe it was in April, and I had to fight in March, and I'd won that fight. And he'd come in, and I just out of the blue, I believe it was like 1:30 in the afternoon. He knew I was in there preparing for a baseball practice, and he just came in there and sat down and said, "Hey, I just want to let you know that if you ever had to give it up to go compete, I'd understand." And that may have been because he felt like he didn't make that choice for himself. Paul was my sole inspiration for being out there, and he inspired me as a coach. For being out there 6 years, and it's like out there. You're out 36 miles from nowhere, and you're entrenching the kids, and I got to learn from him, and he was my inspiration on how to coach and how to be a model for those kids. So, if I didn't have Paul out there, I don't know if I would have lasted.
When you examine that step to say, okay, I'm going to do this full time, I'm walking away from this career, which it'd be easy to say, yes, you can fall back on teaching and coaching,
Sure.
but to step away from a really good paying job, working for someone who's one of the elite wrestling coaches in the nation, frankly, at the high school level, to jump out and do that full time, how much thought process went into, okay, what additional training do I need? Because obviously you had the wrestling background and you knew about approaching the fight game as an athlete, having been a college athlete and played football and baseball and all the other sports. But in terms of being well-rounded, what was the next step? How did you approach, okay, what else can I add to my game to be a mixed martial artist?
Certainly. Well, I mean, my inspiration for that was my last loss, before the decision. Actually, the funny thing was I made the decision after my fight with Neeson Osternick was postponed, and I had a few days. I knew that it was important for me to let the brass at the ranch know, whether I was staying or leaving. I want to trail back just a little bit, because it being a great paying job and with the benefits and so forth actually wasn't the hardest decision of it all. It was leaving something unfinished, what I mean? And that goes from relationships with the kids to relationships with adults. You're invested in their life, and you feel obligated to see them out, and it's tough to leave that, and especially when you're day in, day out. So that superseded any pay concerns or so forth. I was a single guy without kids, so I was confident I could take care of myself. But back to the question regarding figure out what steps I need to take. So I lost to Neeson. He was obviously a very accomplished jiu-jitsu competitor, so I wanted to really up my game there. So that's when as a football coach, you develop a game plan.
Sure.
So my game plan was to, go full time with jiu-jitsu 5 days a week, and then on top of that, add my striking in the mix too. Being a wrestling coach and spending so much time in wrestling, there wasn't a deficit there that really needed attention. So it's address your weaknesses, and obviously from there you become an overall MMA competitor.
The concept of getting a paycheck to fight, whether it's here in the Texas Panhandle, Las Vegas, where you've fought, other parts of the country where you've had fights, regardless of the location, you find the opponent and you fall back on this football background and coaching background. Sure. And evaluate their weaknesses compared to what your strengths are and come up with this game plan. A lot of people, I think, questioned whether or not you were ready to fight a guy the caliber of Eric Big Head Davila, who has developed a pretty good name for himself, close to 40 professional MMA fights, and known as a great striker with tremendous hands. You coming from the wrestling background, I think a lot of people, when you took that fight in Lubbock, were like, man, he's coming off the Neeson Osternick loss, and now he's doing this full time, and he's not ready for a guy the caliber of Eric Davila. Before we talk about the fight, was there any hesitation on your part when Shark Fights contacted you about, are you ready for the big head?
Sure. And it's funny because I didn't know any of those people, because that didn't even cross my mind. I was excited to take a fight, and I felt like the bigger the name, the better for me, and the better opportunity to continue up that path. So I didn't hesitate at all. And I didn't feel any concerns going into the fight. I felt like my game plan was as ever applicable there as it was going to be in any fight, So to be honest and frank, I didn't find out about all these concerns till after I took the fight, a few weeks into it, and then obviously afterwards, when a lot of people were surprised, I wasn't, and that's not out of any disrespect to Eric. It was just a matter of fact, I was excited to take the fight, and I didn't hesitate, and it was as followed, plan as followed.
Well, let me set the scene for you here from a person who was in the media. They're covering the fights. Sure. We had MMA legend Don Fry right there cage side with me. We're in Lubbock, Eric Davila's hometown.
Sure.
5,000 people, 99% of which were Eric Davila fans, diehard fans. And he's a great showman, does a great job in terms of selling the fight. And he comes down the aisle with the big sombrero and his entourage of people and the Tejano music, and he brings a certain level of ambiance, I guess, to the cage. Deafening crowd noise. What's going through your mind as you're standing there in the cage?
I was actually, in that fight, I can say with certainty, I was game ready. I was geared up. Ring the bell is what's going on in my mind. I'm ready to go. Every second that goes by is just interfering with what I want to get done, which was, go in there and finish the fight. So, I was a little surprised at the entourage you walked in with. Right. I found, but to be honest, it just was a speck of a moment going through my mind, and then it was, ring the bell. I think as ready as I felt for a fight. I actually fed off the energy in the crowd, whether it was for me or for him. I liked the fact that people were geared up for the fight. as was I, you know.
So 5,000 people are going nuts. Finally, ring the bell. And for folks who haven't been to the Fair Park Coliseum in Lubbock, it's an old arena. Sound reverberates. It really is deafening when a crowd rises.
Sure.
We're less than 2 minutes into the fight and it's over.
Right.
You've ended it. Silence. What was more satisfactory to you, the build up or hearing literally conversations going on because of the silence and the shock of the crowd as they were stunned at how quickly you ended the fight?
Yeah, I guess, and we can go back a couple questions. I wasn't as shocked, you know what I mean?
Sure.
They were. I felt like that was, when I planned for the fight, that's how I was going to finish it. And so I wasn't in much awe or shock of what just happened. So I was a little surprised that, you know, and of course, I don't know if you recall the interview afterwards, I didn't get a whole lot of love from the crowd.
No,
and,
you certainly did not.
Of course, you know, and surprise to me because I felt like, I didn't do anything to earn their, earn that. So, yeah, I would say the silencing was, I guess from my perspective, a little bit of a shock to me, you know what I mean? Because I didn't feel like it was that big of a surprise in my mind, you know.